Wow, and Ed joins us now. I mean, this is going to be fascinating. You have done so much. You've walked the length of the Amazon River. You spent 60 days in naked solitude on a Fijian island. Why this? Why explore homelessness?
I think because at the moment no one can avoid the fact that homelessness, well, rough sleeping is very visible and it's on the rise, and massively on the rise. I think in the last 10 years in London it's doubled. And I'm a ex-forces, and I was also told that a third of all homeless people are ex-military.
Right.
And when it was put to me by Channel 4, look, would you be prepared to sleep rough for 60 days in order to get an insight into this world, in order to tell people's stories? I thought it would be an amazing challenge, really. Yeah.
What sort of preconceived ideas did you have?
I deliberately didn't sort of gen up on the homelessness issues at all. I didn't want to walk in with any preconceived ideas. I was quite naive in terms of homelessness. I didn't have much interaction with homeless people before. On day one of shooting, I actually said to the series producer, I don't actually want to go and sit down with a homeless person. I was that nervous about the whole situation. And yet, of course, as soon as I did, and I had a chat, and they were lovely, it started to open my eyes. And I started.
So how do you integrate as a guy with a crew? Because obviously they're going to be very wary of you. How do you integrate immediately? You know, sort of pick your slot, and that's where I'm going to sit.
I had to find my feet with it. Initially, I had some really negative reactions. I used the term intentionally homeless at first, and it didn't work at all. It made people really quite angry, actually. I then decided, do you know what? Honesty is always the best policy. And so I sat down, had a chat about the weather, gave someone a cigarette, talked about him for a little bit, and then he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm making a programme for Channel 4. We're telling the stories of people who are sleeping rough. If you're interested in being part of that, we'd love to chat to you. And at that point, you're not faking, you're not pretending, and therefore people either say yes, we'd love to be
not
part
hidden
of it,
cameras.
or
You've got your cameras were in full view.
At that point, cameras then come in.
Yeah.
Once they've said yes.
There were many surprises along the way. One of them was that whilst you were doing it over the 60 days, you actually put on weight. I think you gained sort of 5 kilos of fat, you said.
I did, yeah.
So, I mean, one of the preconceptions is that, you know, you think you wouldn't have much to eat.
I have a bit of an issue with food, and I was really worried that I wouldn't get enough food. In London, and I'm not making up anything, in the morning you can wake up and there's a food handout that gives you coffee and bacon sandwich. You're given sandwiches all day long by members of the public and McDonald's meals and all that sort of stuff. In the evening, there's food handouts where you could probably have a choice of Asian fusion or curry. So much food, the majority of it junk food, if I'm honest. So it's not that... It was shocking, the sheer quantities of food. Not that that's necessarily a healthy diet. It wasn't at all. That's why I was also had a blood result when I came back, and it said if I was to continue that lifestyle, I've got 100% likelihood of developing cardiac illness.
Right.
So
one homeless man complained that the public overfed him.
He did. I mean, he was quite a contentious person.
Right.
But they did say that. I think the problem is everyone is compassionate towards homelessness at the moment. No one likes the fact there's loads of rough sleepers on the street, and that's great. I think, personally, that charity comes with a bit of responsibility. If you're giving food, that can allow an existence to happen on the streets.
Right.
But if you give food and perhaps addiction counselling, or food and help assistance with mental health, then you're helping, or help to navigate the housing system, then you're helping to change a situation.
Because that was, ultimately, what you say is shelter wasn't actually a problem, food wasn't actually a problem, but the addiction to drugs and alcohol, and that dependency and the mental health issues are the is the problem. That's the real problem that needs.
There's a distinction between rough sleeping and homelessness.
Right.
Like homelessness, the problem is lack of housing, undoubtedly, but homelessness includes people in temporary accommodation, in hostels and hotels, all that sort of stuff. Rough sleeping, the people on the street, that's not due to lack of housing. That is due to, in my personal opinion, I'm not an expert on, but you know, 60 days is quite a long time to sort of soak up what's going on. It's addiction and it's mental health problems. And everyone's got a tragic story. They've all come from some sort of broken family, but once on the streets, it's literally, virtually everyone would fall into those two categories.
I was stopped yesterday on the streets of London by a guy who said, be careful what I say, because I obviously don't want to identify any part of him, but he'd had a very rough time. He'd come from up north, was down on the streets of London, and I gave him quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
You think that's a bad idea?
I think I would also say that I do think it's a bad idea now.
Doesn't that sort of reinforce the stereotype we have? Oh, don't give them any money because they just go out and buy drugs.
Do you know what, Philip? I went in with the intention of blowing that stereotype apart. I wanted to blow that apart. And yet, if you're faced with a reality, food wasn't a problem, hats and gloves weren't a problem, sleeping bags weren't a problem, tents weren't a problem, everything was being given to homeless people. Virtually every bit of money that was given was spent on alcohol and drugs. And if you see something and you're trying to explode the stereotype, and you just, I'm really sorry, I can't explode this stereotype.
So the thing is, you don't want to... Sorry, go on.
I think there's a responsibility. Yes, by all means give money, but everyone seems to think, oh, I'm quite liberal, I'm free thinking. Do you know what, if they want to spend it on drugs, let them spend it on drugs. But what I was experiencing was everyone had that attitude now. Everyone thought they were quite unique in having that very liberal attitude towards giving homeless people drugs. I've got a guy living with me that I made friends with on the Strand now. He's painting and decorating my house. And he would totally agree with me. And, you know, you can make, certainly in the run-up to Christmas, we were witnessing £150, £200 a day, cash in hand. Not that people had that in their hand at the end of the day, because as soon as they've got 20 quid, they're off to get the next hit.
So what?
And it really does enable...
off. Like,
I thought I was giving him the money yesterday for 2 or 3 nights of a roof over his head.
Well, that's what I'd be thinking.
That is why I think it's important to have programmes like this which expose what is really, really going on. And I have massive compassion for people who have hit rock bottom and fallen through the safety nets. But I think the assistance can't just be money, it can't just be food. It has to be help with mental health and addiction problems as well, because then you're helping people change their lives rather than enabling it to just continue.
Well, we asked Shelter what advice they would give, and they said if you're concerned about someone who is sleeping rough, the best thing to do is always tell StreetLink, a charity who have outreach services that can go directly to the person. If the person can get access to a phone, they can also call Shelter for free themselves. So better to go to one of these organisations that are experts in this.
And they go on to say some people want to help straight away with money or a hot drink and some food. That is an individual choice.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. But you shouldn't... I was presented... I think the really fascinating thing about this show, which wasn't probably intentional, was you go in and have one chat with a homeless person and you get presented almost a street story. And it's often quite a sob story, and it's often designed to make you be generous with money. As days went by and I followed people's lives, the cracks in those stories started to appear. And the reality of actually, and it ended up being stereotypes, it falls back into the cliche of broken families, problems with addiction, history of being in and out of jail, mental health problems. And not that reduces the compassion, but it does, you know, everyone's got to be aware of what's going on. There's no point pretending the homeless situation is far more squeaky clean than it is. It deserves compassion, but it